All right, guys, welcome back to Reviewers Assemble. As always, I am your host, Kyle. Thank you for joining us. We're doing Thor: Dark World today. This is going to be actually posting after our special edition of Black Panther, so please check that out if you haven't. That's kind of messing up the timeline here, but it's worth a watch, I think, for sure. Joined, as always, by Garrett. Mostly always, I should say. And then Victor. So, if you haven't seen the show before, we're just going to go through our review of Thor: Dark World. We're going to give us our best scenes, our worst scenes, our favorite actor, our least favorite actor, our score, and then how it kind of fits into the MCU as a whole. So, Thor: Dark World, the second Thor movie. We just finished watching the end of it there. What were some of your best scenes for you guys, or the scenes that you thought stood out the most?
For me, I'm going to start off with a kind of an obscure scene, and this is a personal favorite. Like, there's so many probably better scenes than this in the movie, but my favorite is when they go to the doctor's house, or I forget his name now, and they walk in and Thor kind of like hangs up his hammer on the wall. And
the scientist?
Yeah, the scientist.
Selvig, yeah.
Selvig, and he's just standing there with no pants on, and he's just hugging everybody, and he's like, I think better with no pants on. Yep. I think this is one of those, especially in the Thor patriarch of the Avengers universe, is really a pivotal point of the comedic relief, and it just shows that there's it's not dead serious all the time. These are real people. There is humor here, and I got a kick out of him walking through the door, hanging his hammer up. There's a guy with no pants on. They're trying to figure some things out on how to defeat the final enemy, but they never take it so seriously, so I feel like it's just a great scene. It's just a wholesome scene, and I just enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's a good scene. We were kind of talking about how I think the humor is better in this movie, or definitely better than I remembered it being. We are all huge fans of Ragnarok, which is the next Thor movie and the final Thor movie that comes up until the next Thor, which is a year or two away, I think. But yeah, this one was surprising to me because I saw a lot of comedic elements that I didn't think were in here. I think they were trying to finally start to see what do we want Thor to be as a character, and he was super serious in the first one. There were bits of comedy, but we liked the first Thor movie, but it wasn't. It was kind of stale. It wasn't as good. It didn't really hit on the comedic bits, and the adventure was okay, but the villain was kind of weak. So I think we all thought Thor 1 was okay, I would say, or an average
decent
score.
Movie, yeah.
This one I think is an upgrade in pretty much every way there. Some of the best scenes I thought, the car scene when they first discover the ether with Natalie Portman, where with the cars levitating and they're throwing the shoe, and the girl from Two Broke Girls, what's her name?
Darcy in this, but
Darcy, yeah. She's
oh,
give me your shoe, and they're throwing. They're oh, were those the car keys? And
the car keys is hilarious.
Yeah, they're throwing items, and they're sometimes it comes back, and sometimes it doesn't. And I was oh, that's cool.
Then they find the car keys later on.
Yeah.
Planet.
They find the car keys. There were some cool visual scenes I thought in this movie. The whole bit where Loki is prisoner, and then he breaks out, or the curse come in. And then the cursed army is after him, and then he's oh, you sent some friends after me, or something like that. That whole part was cool. Loki, I think, is always cool because he's always you never know what you're seeing, which we see towards the end here. I don't want to get too far ahead there, but a couple of really cool scenes. Everything with the ether, I think, was cool. It was this cool red, really cool, visually striking,
like a magical dust or something.
Yeah, I don't really know how to describe it, but I thought those are all cool. And yeah, like I said, I think this is just an upgrade from the original Thor in every way.
Absolutely. So for me, I actually have two, and I know I do this too much, but the first scene for me a little earlier in the movie is when Thor originally brings Natalie Portman to Asgard, and Frigga, the mother, is trying to protect her from their elves, right?
Yeah, the Dark Elves.
The Dark Elves.
Those are cool.
And that's a great scene. I mean, she is badass. She was going to beat Malekith. She was ready to beat him. And then, I forget,
his henchman shows up as
who takes on that. He takes on that evil spirit or whatever.
When she dies.
Sucks in the ether or whatever.
Yeah. So that scene is so sick. One, I mean, Frigga's a badass queen that holds her own. She protects Natalie Portman and saves her. And then Thor coming in and shooting lightning right at Malekith and then striking them with the hammer as they fall off. I mean, that was just a great scene. The other one for me, and jumping right into the other planet because the beginning of that's awesome, is when Thor recruits Loki to help him out, and they play that little hustle with Malekith where Loki pretends to turn on Thor, stabs him, and then cuts Thor's arm off, and it's all a ruse to hustle Malekith. I mean, that scene was sick, and that's the real like strength of Loki. His magical side is unbelievable, and he's a pretty good fighter too. But the magical side throughout the whole MC universe is so cool.
Yeah,
like even at the end, he pretends to be Odin. Like we see him at the end, playing the Odin part.
Cool.
So the way he can just hustle people and deceive them is amazing. So those are my two favorite scenes.
What do you think were some of your worst scenes or your least favorite scenes in this movie?
Honestly, I didn't love the ending. It kept being shown that the ether was like indestructible. So during my favorite scene, they sucked the ether out of Jane Foster, and Thor strikes it with the lightning, and it becomes like this crystal glass, and then Malekith like absorbs it again. But at the end, they use those like scientific tools to make all the different body parts of Malekith disappear. But where does the ether end up? And that was something. So I guess it's not a bad like graphical scene. Like it was cool to watch, but from a logistic standpoint, and I kind of harp on this a lot with these movies, and maybe it's a lack of my imagination, I guess. But like the ether was indestructible, but then because you send it to different planets, it's destructible. Unless I missed something, it didn't add up to me. It got a little too dark, a little too survivable too. I expected somebody to die there, and I know that's not really the Marvel thing. Like you don't really see good guys die, not this early. So I guess the ending it didn't add up to me. It was good to watch, but logistically it didn't make sense.
Yeah. Garrett, what about you? What about your worst scenes?
My worst scene is kind of where the ether gets introduced. Is it Natalie Portman?
Yeah.
She walks.
It goes into her.
Yeah, exactly. She I forget what happens, and that's probably why this makes this such a bad scene.
Mm.
But all I remember is she walks into this abandoned building, and she's drawn to something, and then she walks into this room, and all of a sudden she's in another universe or something, like just a parallel dimension.
Well, they do say that the ether needs a host. So I think it's kind of like the symbiote in Venom, where it kind of reminded me of that, where it needs a host.
Drew her in or something, but I just kind of was all of a sudden I'm like, okay, she's in an abandoned building, and now she's somewhere totally different, and there's this stone, and the ether's in between it, and she touches it, and granted, we learn later that these different realms are all of a sudden starting to align, and so there's a
the 9 realms
connection, but at that point we don't know that, and so all of a sudden I'm watching this, and she's just in another realm, and I'm like, how did she just walk through the door?
Yeah, she's being possessed. It's a really weird scene where it's all red around her, and it looks cool, but I agree. She's just
it's just
when it was like she's dreaming kind of
when I was watching it, I'm just like,
what's going on?
How did this all right, this escalated very quickly.
But she did disappear because Darcy was like, Jane,
she
where were you?
5 hours.
Yeah, you're right.
Because she's like, why'd you call the police? They're going to be on our tail. And she's like, you were gone for 5 hours. And it's like, oh. So
yeah.
That part is cool. But yeah, I agree.
I just kind of, when I was watching it, I'm like, I'm a little confused with this. So I'm putting it as my worst scene because it just didn't connect the dots well enough for me.
Which is fair, yeah.
Yeah, kind of branching off of that. That scene, I thought it was weird that Thor takes Natalie, Jane Foster, Natalie Portman, takes her to Asgard right away.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of weird because Odin's like, why did you bring her here? You've endangered us or whatever. And she has the ether in her. And Thor's like, oh, well, we, there's something in her and we need to find out. They're doing the work or the research on her. But then it ends up exploding in there, and I don't think it kills anyone, but it's endangering Asgard, and it's dude, why didn't I don't know, it's weird. Kind of branching off of that scene too. I didn't like when they first Thor shows up and in that storage yard or whatever. like in the rain.
Mm.
She just like sees him down. He's like between a couple storage crates or whatever. It's weird, but
And there's like a single cloud just raining on that area.
I thought I know what they were going for there, but I didn't really love that scene. But it's weird because she's like, "Where have you been?" And he's like, "I'm sorry, I was saving the world in Avengers." Like she's like, "Oh, you were in New York." She's like, "Why didn't you come see me?" I was like, dude, he was working to try and save the Earth.
Exactly.
And when he got back to Asgard, there was a bunch of wars going on, and he had to settle those.
Yeah, and he says that like,
she's just concerned about it, you know.
Yeah, and if you remember, they say at the beginning, Odin says like Loki has to deal for like his crimes, and it's really interesting because he's like brought in as a prisoner at the beginning, and like he's in chains or whatever. And like they say back at Asgard, like Thor has to clean up your mess that you've made.
Yeah.
And so that's when we see, like you said, where he's like going through and he's like fighting. There's like a cool scene where he fights the rock giant or whatever, and he just blows him up in one swoop.
Hit.
And he's like, anyone else? But yeah, it felt a little rushed to me. Where like I don't know, it felt like they kind of threw everything together there. So what do you guys think is the strongest Avenger in this movie?
Who you want? I guess I'll start. Loki. I didn't go with him in the first Thor. I wasn't here for Avengers. But in this movie here, he's limited to a prison in the early part of it, which kind of hampers him. But then you learn like that's when you first start to see like in the first Thor movie, you learn his illusions, and he's a magician, and he's a trickster, and he plays mind games. And you see that when their mother passes away, and Thor comes to tell him that, and he's like, Loki, enough with the games. And Loki's standing there yelling at him like, oh, you finally come to see me. And then all of a sudden it just wipes the slate clean, and the room's destroyed. He's clearly on edge and having a rough time dealing with this throughout the movie. And then when they take the fight to the Dark Elves, and he makes Thor look like he's lost his arm. Basically, just the whole movie just pulling tricks. And even though you know Loki can do this, you forget about it. And then it happens again and again and again. And I think in this movie, especially at the end, when he shows up as Odin, you realize like oh god, this guy just has total control over every situation. He's smarter than everybody else. He just knows how to manipulate his way to get where he wants to be. And you always, they always say like, oh, I hope you don't betray Thor and all that. He's going to betray everybody. He's only out for himself, and you never know where he's going to be, when he's going to show up, or who he is, or what's going on. He's kind of an anomaly, and I like that, so I gave him my strongest Avenger.
Yeah, going off of Garrett here, Loki's also my strongest Avenger. Where like, yeah, Tom Hiddleston kills it, and like he's so you never know, and the visual effects are so cool in this movie. I didn't remember about the Odin reveal at the end where he's pretending to be Odin. He talks to Thor, and then at the very end we see he changes back to Loki. I didn't remember about him cutting off Thor's arm in one of your best scenes that he talks about. That was really cool, where he tricks Malachi to get the ether out so that he can destroy it.
In that scene right there, I love when he's fighting the monster and he throws that thing that like sucks them up. He's like, "See you in hell, monster!"
Dude, really quick, the black hole grenades are awesome.
Unbelievable.
Those are so cool. Like I forgot those were in this movie, and I was like, that's gotta be one of the coolest things in the MCU. Where like they throw a grenade, and instead of just a normal grenade, it's a black hole where it literally sucks everything in. Yeah, it's so cool. Those are awesome. Yeah. One of my best scenes that I forgot about actually is where Loki and Thor are going down that hallway, and then Loki's changing and all these different things, and then we actually get a Cap. We get a Cap cameo.
Cap. He's like, God bless America.
Yeah, he's like, this is righteous, and I'm like, oh man, that's so good.
And he turns Thor into Civ, right?
And he's like, looking good, brother.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, that's a good scene. That's a good little bit there. Tom Hiddleston he's so charismatic as Loki, and like they do such a good job with the visual effects. Where like just like the prison scene that you mentioned is so cool, and I kind of remember that from watching it last time, where Loki's like all composed and he's got his hands behind his back and he's being mischievous, like we always see Loki. And then he's talking to Thor, and Thor's like, no more games. And then that's when he wipes it clean, like you said. And like, yeah, the room is wrecked. Loki's like, his clothes are ripped, he's torn, like he's clearly like suffering. And it's like, he's just always, Loki is in a prison cell, and he like, you can just tell he's always up to something. He's always working, like he's always one step ahead. We saw a little bit of that in Avengers, and it's like, I think he just shines in this movie, and like I think Chris Hemsworth was good, but I think he's better, for sure. So, Vic, who do you have as your strongest Avenger?
My strongest Avenger is Loki, Tom Hiddleston,
Ooh,
but
this is the first
first time
honors.
ever, so I'm not going to talk about it
Nice.
more. I will give some shout outs. Heimdall, Idris Elba, I
Mm.
mean, always phenomenal. The scene where, because he can see everything that's happening, the scene where he can't see the elf ship show up, but he hears like the whistling from the ship, and he runs and tries stabbing. He takes down one of them with a knife, and then my other little shout out would be to Frigga. I mean, that one of my favorite scenes. I mean, she is a badass queen. She sacrifices herself for her son's, first love or whatever. So yes, Loki's my strongest Avenger, but I have to give a shout out to those two. I was very high in Thor 1 about the supporting cast, like the smaller roles, and it carried right over into this. I mean, I loved Thor's his little gang, like those buddies and all those guys at the beginning, and when they're celebrating drinking, and Civ is clearly has feelings for Thor. So I love the supporting cast in the Thor movies. I'm actually kind of sad to see them. Oh no, we see them a little bit in Ragnarok at the end, but for the most part,
they show
they're
up
done.
briefly in here. I think the same group. I remember there's a scene where they come through, but I don't think they really have any screen time.
No, just at the beginning. So, but overall, I mean, Heimdall and Frida, I gotta give him a little shout out.
Love Idris Elba.
Yeah,
He's good in everything.
Yeah, he's a stud in this for sure.
Yeah, I think he plays a bigger role in Ragnarok too. I don't.
Yep, gets even bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the world of Thor, I think is really cool. I think Asgard is awesome.
Yeah, Asgard's sick.
And Ragnarok explores that more too. But it's like, yeah, I think just looking at like not looking too far ahead here, but the trilogy as a whole, like when you really think about it, like personally, I didn't care about Thor at all before the MCU started. Like I was like, I don't even.
No, why would
Thor 1 came out, and I was like, I don't know who this character is. I was like, I don't care about Thor. I don't know who Chris Hemsworth is.
Just a Greek god for most people.
But when you look back as a whole in the MCU, like as a trilogy, it's actually really good. Like even the first Thor is like a solid entry point. I think this builds on it a little bit, and then I think Ragnarok is like it's like it hits the
for sure.
I didn't mean to cut you off there. Right?
No, you're good. No, that was great. I mean, for me, I'll just roll right into worst Avenger. I'm just baby arms.
Keeps forgetting the baby arms.
I know, baby arms, right? It's because my arms are becoming babies. So, for me, it's Jane Foster. I can't get attached to her role in her character, and I don't know why. And I love Natalie Portman. I think she's adorable.
She's great.
Yeah, she's cute as hell. I think she's a great actor. There's just something about her character that irks me. She's too like gaga-eyed, and maybe it's because she's playing this scientific nerd, which stereotypically doesn't have the best like romantic life, but she's very attractive. So it's like I can't like put the very attractive, humble, nerdy, geeky side together, crushing on Thor, or I don't know what it is. There's just something that irks me. It's not a Natalie Portman thing. It is a Jane Foster character thing. It just bothers me, but she's definitely my baby arms for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we might have a fully unanimous vote both ways here, but Jane Foster is also my baby arms this week. So, yeah, similar to what you said, Vic. Like Natalie Portman, one of my favorite people. I love that she's in like Star Wars and she's in like other movies. She's even like Your Highness. Which is like one of that Danny McBride movie.
Never even heard of it.
Oh yeah, it's a good it's a good movie. James Franco, Danny McBride. Yep. She's in other roles too, but like she's great. Like you said, she's adorable. She's super attractive. She's cute. But yeah, her character, they don't like give her much. I again, that was kind of my worst scene. I got kind of mad or annoyed when she was like, "Why didn't you come see me? You were in New York." And again,
in her defense, she has that one strong scene at the very end when the ship is about to collapse on them, and she just hovers over Thor, and she was going to die with him when the ship's about to collapse. So that's a one time, because she's either gaga-eyed at Thor or she's like full scientific nerd. That's the first time she shows like, I don't want to say courage, but like, yeah, a combination of courage and compassion, because Thor's knocked out cold, and she lays on top of him to protect him. Clearly they're going to die together.
Yeah.
And then the ship goes into the vortex thing and disappears.
I think part of my issue too with their relationship is that when I look at these movies, I'm like, you don't really know Thor. Like
nope.
You know, like their love never really seems
that was my gripe in the first one.
Valid to me, where it's like, yeah, the first one I feel like they barely know each other, but then she's like, "Where were you?" And it's like, you still don't know this dude, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And obviously she knows he's going to other
He's not
worlds.
human.
Yeah, no, it's like
it's a kind of a weird attraction.
it is. It's like it's too bad that we didn't have like a movie to like really build that up, because I think the two like actors like Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth, I think they really could be like a believable couple or like a love interest, but I don't think we spent enough time like, and I don't know how they would do it because it's tough with Thor, but like, yeah, there's like
It would almost have to be a Jane Foster movie, like focus on the science side a
yeah.
little bit more.
I mean, it's tough. Like, yeah, we almost need like a Jane Foster like origin movie or something.
Which
But, like,
if you think about it, and we kind of skipped the recap because this is post Avengers where she calls Thor out for not visiting while he was in New York, blah blah blah. You can almost fill that gap with like a 2-year Jane Foster movie where she's focused on the science and she discovers more, blah blah blah.
But she's
Here's
got her
some
own work.
hypotheticals.
But then like she's like, Thor, where were you? But he does say like, I was out saving like 9 other realms. Like he's like, I'm trying to like right all the wrongs, and it's like I just thought it was weird as she seemed just like kind of like a clingy girlfriend almost, where she's just like, why didn't you call? And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, I had other fish to fry. Like I had other things going on. So yeah, Jane Foster for me. I love Natalie Portman as an actress, but this role, I think, in her role in the MCU, I think she's getting her own Thor movie. Like
I think so too. Yeah. So
Thor: Love and Thunder, I think, which would probably be awesome. So like that, her role might change in the MCU, but at this point, I think it's Baby Arms for sure for me. But what about you, Garrett?
Jane Foster is clearly not a strong Avenger in this movie, but not my Baby Arms. My Baby Arms, surprisingly enough, is going to go to Odin. Not Anthony Hopkins. I mean, his performance is fine.
He's great.
It's Odin the character. And here's why, just based on the movie. Asgard gets attacked. And it gets attacked fairly easily, and he is almost nowhere to be found. And then after he shows up and they've already destroyed his throne and all that, Thor tries to talk to him, plan an attack, and or more or less kind of set a game plan for how they're going to combat this, how they're going to take on the Dark Elves, how they're going to handle all of it. And he doesn't listen to Thor. And then, I'm sorry, who is the queen again? What's her name? Frida. Like, Frida ends up dying. Thor's the first person to show up. Odin's not there again. Like, there was multiple scenes where, like, Asgard is under attack and people are in need of help, and Odin is just nowhere to be found. So I'm like, throughout this whole movie, I'm like, Odin's kind of useless to Asgard.
Yeah.
It's really just Thor.
Yeah.
Like, Thor and even Loki seems more powerful at this point. So I don't understand the power of Odin. I don't understand why he's king anymore. He really should just relinquish the throne to Thor at this point, because it's becoming obvious that he doesn't have a control in the situation and doesn't want to listen to anybody. Kind of a stick in the mud for some scenes.
It's funny you say that because at the end, it seems like Odin's giving Thor a nice little speech saying, "It's your time to be king. You're smarter than I thought you were." The whole time it was actually Loki.
Exactly.
So Loki was
it was
able
Odin.
to Loki was able to trick Odin, and we find out later in Infinity War that Loki put him in a retirement home on Earth.
Exactly.
So like, you know, how weak was Odin to literally get tricked to go to Earth and be in a retirement home? Like, crazy.
Exactly, and I'm not even pulling from that because that's kind of,
You're
technically
looking ahead,
but even in this movie, from what you get from this movie, it's just Odin is a weak link.
Yeah.
And I'm
he
looking
is.
at him, I'm like, this is the king of Asgard, technically still, and he was more of a liability.
yeah, he's all ego.
So that's why I put him as my Baby Arms. It's like, you're supposed to defend this planet as the king, and you've totally failed to do it in this
Yeah,
movie.
he has a much bigger role, I think, in Thor 1. He comes to save
In
Thor in Thor 1.
he actually displays strength and courage and leadership.
Mhm.
In this movie, he does nothing.
Yeah.
He's completely useless.
Yeah. No, that's a fair Baby Arms, I think.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. All right, so for scores, Vic, you wanna go first? What are you gonna score this?
So this one was tough for me because I think we're all on the same page. I didn't think we were as high on it as we thought we were. I didn't think we were going to be as high on it as we are now. And looking at it after Avengers and kind of how cool everything kind of comes together afterwards. He built that relationship. He came back to New York. Like, all this stuff. For me, and I love the relationship with Selvig. I think he's hilarious. For me, I'd give it an 8-1. So for me, I give that an above average movie. It's pretty good. It's pretty solid. I do have it above the first Thor.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty low on my list. I think it's like third or fourth from the bottom so far.
Okay. Yeah, I actually have the exact same score. I have an 8.1 too. Yeah, I had an 8.2, and right before we started recording, actually, I just thought 8.1 sounded a little more appropriate for whatever reason. We didn't discuss this at all beforehand, so... yeah, I like this movie a lot more. I think we all kind of agree, like, we like this movie more than we remember.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say Thor Dark World is, like, the worst MCU movie, and I'm like, no, that's Hulk by a mile.
No, everyone forgets about Hulk, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like, I don't know why, like, rewatching this movie, I don't know why people hate on it so much, because, like, it really isn't bad, and I actually found myself enjoying a lot of it.
Malekith, the bad guy, is great. I mean, it's really good.
Yeah, Malachi was cool. The one, really quick, not to harp back, I'm probably, like, getting a reputation for this now, but, the one thing I didn't like at the very beginning is when they hit the ether, right, way back when, like, 5,000 years ago or whatever, with Malachi, and they don't destroy it. They say, like, we're going to hide it somewhere. And I'm like, what? Why wouldn't you destroy it?
Yeah.
And that part I thought was weird. There's also, like, kind of a cool bit with Odin, where, like, baby arms for sure. I agree with you, Garrett. But there is one cool scene where Odin does say, like, to Thor, I think, where he says, like, you know, we're not human, or they're like, he's like, we die just like them. He's like, you know, we live, we die. That's it. And then I think Thor says, like, yeah, give or take 5,000 years. But that was just a cool little bit. But yeah, 8.1 for me. I think this is definitely better than the first Thor. I think visually, I think story-wise, the villain, I think, is much better than stupid Destroyer or whatever it was. We don't get the side crew for Thor like you liked in the first one. We do get a really quick shot of them, but I think the supporting cast is better besides Odin. Loki, I think, is, like, masterful in this movie, and Thor, I think Chris Hemsworth is a lot better. I think the comedy is way better than I remember. There's a few scenes where I, like, laughed out loud at, and so I think this is just a big upgrade. And again, looking ahead to Ragnarok, which is the final Thor movie, when we get there, I think you get the great origin story with Thor, or the good, I would say good origin story with Thor. Then you get an upgrade here where I think they're kind of telling a little bit better of a story. They're going to more in depth with the characters. They're fleshing out a little bit more. And they're starting to kind of play with that comedy. And then you see a lot more comedy in Ragnarok, which I think a lot of people love. So it's kind of cool to see the progression from all three movies there. So 8.1, I think, is a fair score for me.
Cool.
All right, well, this is where I kind of screwed up because I didn't do my homework and forgot where I ranked Thor 1. But I'm going to give it a 7.5. If anyone knows my rankings, I do not tend to rank high. So 7.5 is not bad. But I do put, I think Thor 1 should be ahead of that. If I'm wrong, I'll fix it next week. Because I actually do put it behind Thor 1. And reason being is I just think Thor 1 had more memorable scenes. Like him trying to pull the hammer and he can't do it. Him getting cast out of Asgard. Him, even though Destroyer's an awful enemy, him, just the whole him coming to light and realizing and becoming kind of a true Asgardian. I think that made that movie slightly better than this one, even though this one did have some cool points to it, and it definitely had the cool black hole grenades, which is awesome.
That was cool.
But in this one here, 7.5, I thought it was solid. I wasn't blown away. A couple comedic relief scenes really like helped me out with it, but it was okay. I wouldn't put it in my upper echelon of Avengers movies. Definitely not as bad as Hulk, but you know, it's kind of due to all these movies being so great, it's kind of near the bottom.
So where do you rank it overall then?
So if we're going for overall rankings, let me pull it back up. Still have Avengers at 1, Iron Man 1 at 2, Cap 1 at 3, Black Panther at 4, which we did out of order, and Iron Man 2 at 5, Iron Man 3 at 6, the original Thor at 7, Thor Dark World comes in right beneath that, and then obviously the movie in which we do not speak its name.
The Voldemort of movies.
Yes, exactly.
So I mean, I'm pretty close to the same as you. So I have Iron Man 3 as my 7th overall. So Black Panther, Avengers, Iron Man, Captain America, Iron Man 2, Thor Dark World, Iron Man 3, Thor, Hulk. So 6th overall. So I have it just above Iron Man 3, Thor, and Hulk. So overall I thought it was pretty good, but not fantastic.
Okay, so for rankings for me for this one, like I said, I gave it an 8-1. So for this one for me, I kind of went back and forth on this one, but my rankings, my current rankings, I got Cap 1 still. I was pretty high on Black Panther, so I got that at number 2. I got Iron Man 3 at number 3, then Iron Man, the original, then Iron Man 3. Then
So you had Iron Man 2 at number 2.
I'm
You said
sorry.
3. Correction.
Let me restart this shit then. So for my rankings, I got Captain America, First Avenger at number 1 still. We got Black Panther starting at number 2. Number 3 we got Iron Man 2. Then I got Iron Man the original. Then I got Iron Man 3. And then I'm gonna throw a wrench in there and throw Dark World ahead of Avengers here, because I didn't want to put it above Avengers, but I think personally, looking at my rankings, which movie would I rather rewatch? Again, I kind of noticed it. I know, Garrett, you weren't there for the Avengers ranking, but I got a little bored with Avengers. And when I was thinking about what movie would I want to rewatch or what movie could I throw on, I thought Dark World. And it's cool. We all have our own rankings.
Can we throw you out of your own show, or?
I mean, you can. You can.
Okay.
Who's going to edit the film?
Yeah.
You know. So for me right now, I got Dark World, then Avengers, then Thor, then the Voldemort, the Incredible Hulk. So yeah. So that's kind of our review for Thor: Dark World. So thank you guys again for joining us. Again, please go check out the special Black Panther review that we did. Again, rest in peace for Chadwick Boseman. Our condolences. But we did do that out of order because of the events of late.
Basically, due to unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah, no, tragic events. So, but yeah, thank you for joining us for Dark World. Next up, we have Winter Soldier, which is, I think, going to be sort of a high point.
Absolutely.
We'll say I know a lot of people are high on that movie, so we're going to do Winter Soldier next. We should be back in the regular timeline. Hopefully, nothing else crazy happens in the MCU in terms of real life situations or deaths or anything like that. So we'll be going in order from here on out, hopefully. So Winter Soldier's next. Please join us for that. But until next time, peace.